Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for Saturday, June 16th, 2012. As you are hopefully aware, Hurricane Carlotta made landfall early last night in southern Mexico as a Category 1 hurricane, winds about 90 miles per hour. Now its circulation is weakening over the fairly high terrain of Mexico here, still bringing a lot of heavy rain as you would expect. It takes a while for these tropical cyclones to lose their punch and to spin down. As powerful as they are, they can be pretty fragile, but it takes them a while to go away. You usually need a lot of dry air or very cold water to dissipate them quickly, and mountains too help, but since this has sort of got 1 foot in the water and 1 foot over land, Carlotta is going to take a little bit of time to go away. And what may happen with its remnant energy and moisture, this entire region is fairly unsettled, part of a monsoon trough that extends through here, and a general favorable pattern for development from the MJO pulse, that Madden-Julian oscillation that I have talked about in recent days. We may see some of this energy kind of come over and get tangled up into here and try to develop next week. This energy from a tropical wave also arriving on the scene. So this is going to be our next area to watch as we get into next week, and I'll address that in just a moment. Farther out into the eastern Pacific, we do have this one area out here that the Hurricane Center has outlined. Basically no chance for it to develop. Is going to move towards colder water. And while we do have this nice, it's definitely a low pressure area, you can really see the cold water because of this, that stratiform cloud cover, stratocumulus clouds. If you were in a boat out here looking up at the sky, it would be that, almost like that mackerel sky, like the side of a mackerel, a fish. So an interesting feature there, just a mid-latitude, low pressure area, obviously non-tropical, but you can definitely see the influence of the colder Pacific water here, because cold water doesn't allow for much energy to be released into the atmosphere in terms of latent heat. It's down here in the tropics where the very warm water lies that all that energy gets released, and you get convection. This storm system here, this little low pressure area, very little convection at all, just a flat, very flat storm system over cold Pacific water. Looking at the MJO for the next couple of weeks, this is your favorable area of development or upward motion in the atmosphere. Right now, a good deal of the Atlantic Basin, the Western Hemisphere, green, meaning generally favorable upward motion way up at 200 millibars, or at the outflow level of tropical cyclones. That holds over the next several days and actually intensifies, especially once we get out to 2 weeks, at least according to the GFS, where we may see some fairly active tropical waves develop off of Africa and move their way westward over time as we get into the first part of July. But this active phase of the MJO for the next 2 weeks may spawn some development in the Atlantic Basin. And that brings me to the GFS analysis. This is the 12Z GFS run for today, Saturday, and this is valid 5 days out. So this is 120 hours from this morning. So this would be valid on Thursday morning at about 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And we see that the GFS operational model, this is the main forecast operational model for the United States, you generally have a large area of low pressure trying to develop here in the Bay of Campeche, the southern Gulf of Mexico. If we look at day 6, it actually intensifies, and you can tell it's got some banding arms here, that spiral band to it. Doesn't take much of an imagination to see that, and a definite closed low right there in the southern Gulf of Mexico. And then finally by day 7, so this will be valid a week from today, next Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning, a fairly well developed, yet I guess you would call it weak, tropical cyclone. I have southeast winds here at about 25 knots, northwest winds here at about 20 knots. So a definite storm in the Gulf. How strong it could get, hard to say a week out. That's a long time in the weather. But it's now time to start thinking about maybe seeing some development somewhere in this area over the next week or so, as Bermuda high pressure builds in the western Atlantic that would keep this system west, maybe a threat to Texas or northern Mexico. Just something to think about. I don't want to get too many people alarmed. We do have these computer models that allow us to see out into the future, but sometimes they're wrong and there may be nothing there in a week. But they are getting pretty good, these computer models, and as I showed you here, if we go back a couple of frames, on day 5 we start to see the beginnings of this system here in the Bay of Campeche, and that's not too far out into the future. You know, your forecast from the Weather Service, it goes out to 7 days. If you go to weather.gov and put in your zip code, you get a 7-day forecast. So it's something to keep in mind, and this region is favored this time of year, as we see again day 6 and day 7, a possible tropical depression or maybe a tropical storm taking shape in the western Gulf of Mexico. You folks in Texas, Louisiana, and northern Mexico, keep an eye on this, which you should in any case because it is hurricane season. So there you have it. You're caught up for today, Saturday, June 16th. Again, I am Mark Sudduth, my website, hurricanetrack.com. Very, very glad to provide you with these video blogs for Hurricane and Hurricane HD, and I will have another one for you tomorrow.